Meet Retro Bowl's biggest threat. No, it's not pixelated CTE, it's super tiny football. See, the problem with Retro Bowl, if you guys are anything like me, is I've just been waiting around for the game to start innovating and adding additions that are gonna improve the replayability of the game. It's getting stale, and honestly, I'm tired of waiting. Because when a company doesn't have the same vision as the consumers like you and me, we're gonna be waiting around for a long time. But today's video sponsor, Super Tiny Football, takes all of the fun aspects that are quick and easy about Retro Bowl's gameplay and takes a bunch of team building customization strategies that you would see in a game like Madden and mashes them together. Greg, this is too good to be true. A free game that's fast, fun, easy to play, has a ton of team building, coaching staff, upgradable facilities, all these great things. Let's jump into what Super Tiny Football has to offer. And I think the number one, back of the box crown jewel piece that this game has is the immersive team building experience. So the first thing you're going to notice when you fire up a new game is how many ways there are to improve your team. In the top left, you're going to have a currency, what's known as franchise credits, and you're going to be able to earn these by simply just playing the game. You get 5 credits for every win and 3 for every loss. As I mentioned though, there are so many ways to improve your existing talent or straight up acquire new players if your team is just downright awful. Don't have a single player on defense that can make a tackle? Bring someone in through free agency. You'll have to spend franchise credits, but you don't have to give up other assets on your team. Quarterback sucks? Trade for a better one with either draft capital or another member of your team, and pay the difference in value in franchise credits. Wide receiver core has no potential, probably not going to amount to anything, maybe be a tax agent at the end of the season. Set your scouting focus to wide receivers for the upcoming draft. You collect info on prospects, build your own big board, and at the end of the season, you can participate in a 100-player 3-round pro draft. You can see where all the prospects you had your eye on are going to land and maybe even find a diamond in the rough. Now, I'm talking about the team building because I love that aspect of football so much, but this is where, again, I'm not trying to compare this game specifically to Retro Bowl, but with Retro Bowl, I've been asking for over 2 years now, can you give us the ability to scout players ahead of time? Trade deadline, end of the season. I want to be able to see what are the upcoming prospects in the draft, so that way I know if I have a player whose contract is expiring, if I have somebody that I'm debating keeping and I don't know if I want to spend the money, bring somebody else in, I don't know how I want to handle the situation, can I see what the talent coming into the draft, like real players and real football teams do, ahead of time? And you know what? Super Tiny Football said, I got you there. And these players are auto-generated at the beginning of the season, but it's not like they're just like, names that pop up and then they disappear. I mean, you'll see a guy from week 1 or week 3 or whenever you find him on your scouting board, and then in the pro draft, you will see them get picked at a certain team as well. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't show you where they go, but if you go to trade for a player, you can see what pick is being offered. So technically, you can still see where they go, but I'd like to see SMT show where the team on the draft board is, but it's a very small note. You can trade up and trade down in the draft. If you have enough franchise credits and enough draft capital, really nothing is off the table. So if there's a specific player you're like, I gotta have this guy, you can still trade for him. We'll come back to the draft later. Let's say you like your team. For some reason, you say, these players, I'm going to stick with them. And I want to see them reach their full potential. You can improve your facilities like your practice field, your athletic department, and the gym to see boosts in progression for key attributes like agility, endurance, and technique. And if that's not enough to whip your team into shape, try bringing in a better trainer to see those XP bars just fill up end over end. As I mentioned, it's not just about your team. You have an offense and defensive coordinator, which are going to improve your overall squad players that are not your main superstars, as well as offensive coordinators having the ability as you improve them to have more audibles per half, up to 12 audibles per half for a 5-star offensive coordinator. And then you have offensive and defensive trainers, which are going to boost the XP gained for that side of the ball. You can bring in scouts, which will have better talent evaluation, as well as having more abilities to scout players either basic or full. So there's a reason to upgrade any of the positions across the board, whether it be an actual player on the field or someone on the coaching staff. And because this game allows you to have up to 16 star players as opposed to 10 or 12 like Retro Bowl, you don't have to sacrifice talent for one side of the ball or another. And depth actually matters because Super Tiny Football has a lot of unique plays and formations that feature up to 4 wide receivers at a time. You'll see a rotation of running backs and tight ends. And while you have so many stars at your disposal, you might be worried, oh, can I pay all these players? But remember, in the beginning, your team's gonna suck, so they're not gonna want a lot of money. But if you can manage to win 50% of your games on any of the 3 difficulties, you will organically unlock the next salary cap level without having to spend any franchise credits on it. I mean, you guys know how expensive it is in Retro Bowl to upgrade your salary cap. This means you can allocate franchise credits on things that actually matter, like upgrading your coaching staff and scouting. In fact, if you can make the playoffs in your 2nd season, win the divisional game in your 3rd season, and make a Super Tiny Bowl appearance in your 4th, you'll max out your salary cap from $100 million to $250 without spending a single credit. That's that dynamic progression you love to see, and that's just from playing the game. Progression in this game synergizes so well with everything. Players level up, your facilities and staff improve, your talent increases through various ways of acquiring players, and you get get better at the game by just playing as well. You start to learn little nuanced things, whether it be, you know, certain angles to take when it comes to running the ball, or how to manage the clock better. And the thing is, your staff and team are directly affecting one another. That's why I love the organic salary cap. There are so many things to spend your franchise credits on. Why would you want to spend it on improving your salary cap? It's just going to want to incentivize you to either do tedious grinding or microtransactions. This game is not about that at all. It wants you to have fun playing the game. Because honestly, a lot of these team building aspects do sound fun, but they don't really matter if the core gameplay loop, which is the actual gameplay, isn't enjoyable. Honestly, gameplay is where Super Tiny Football shines. For starters, a game this small has no reason to look this good. I mean, we're talking a coin toss. We're talking cinematic shots of the stadium, a colorful scoreboard with graphics, live sidelines with both teams and coaches, dancing cheerleaders, excited fans, a jumbotron. Jerry Jones is frothing at the mouth. Scoring plays are followed up by dance moves, flexing, pyrotechnics, cheers from the stadium, multiple different replay angles so you can watch every score in style. And let's talk X's and O's. Let's get John Gruden out here. When your offense hits the field, you'll feel right at home. The game has a simple drag and drop passing, which is easy to perform, but it takes a lot to master. Timing and anticipation will be rewarded with huge plays, and your level of precision will matter more as you increase difficulty from easy all the way to hard. Defenders will undercut passes for deflections and interceptions, so be sure to take your time in the pocket. Just note that it's going to be more precious as you increase difficulties, so you'll have to make more decisive decisions. As far as the ground game, the dash mechanic is your best friend. I will say the dash mechanic was probably like the biggest learning curve I had. It's very simple. You're just like a long swipe on the screen just to kind of get a boost. It might take a game or two for you to really understand that when you catch a pass, you should do a long dash to separate. And when it comes to running the ball, many times taking a wider approach with one dash and then using a second dash to kind of course correct is the best form of action. I will give you another piece of advice, especially early on in the game. It doesn't really matter whether you pass the ball every time or run it. A mix of both is probably the best strategy, but I've ran for 400 yards on a team. I've passed for 600. The most important thing is taking advantage of who's actually good on your team. Because in this game, it's not really about busted plays or taking advantage of the CPU. It's just about utilizing your best players, whether it be their speed or their strength, trying to get an advantage over the other team. And while the gameplay isn't perfect, it's still really fun. Some things I would like to see added at some point would be some sort of skill moves, whether it be jukes or spins, the ability to fumble the ball as much as I will probably get annoyed, and the ability to scramble with your quarterback, as there is a speed stat currently for your quarterback, but it doesn't really do anything as far as I know because you can't scramble. In fact, this kind of brings me to a little bit of a weird part of the video, but I think it's worth noting. Each player on your team has 6 attributes as opposed to 4 like you'd see in Retro Bowl or 73 which you'd see in Madden. And while the strength, speed, endurance, and agility are relatively straightforward, whether it be, you know, your overall top end speed, your ability to resist tackles for strength, how long you can run down the field without running out of gas, and your ability to make quick cuts. But when it comes to a quarterback, yes, arm strength makes sense. It's how far you can throw the ball, how far is that little arch gonna go. But something like technique, I have no idea what that means. And linemen have a thing called dueling. I would just like to know specifically what these things do. You know, in a game like Retro Bowl, it explains, oh, your speed determines this, your strength determines this. I would like there to be some sort of, you know, when you hit the question mark, tell me what exactly technique means for a quarterback. I just want to know. It would be nice to have an explanation so I know if I should be valuing a 20 speed quarterback if I'll never be able to leave the pocket. And at the end of the game, you're going to see all your total yards, your first downs, the run and pass splits, your turnovers, and your time of possession. And these stats go even deeper when it comes to player-specific stats, as your stats are going to be recorded for not only the game, the season, but also every player's career. For a position like receiver, it's not just receptions, yards, and touchdowns, it's also their averages per catch and even per game, as well as their longest receptions, all their rushing stats, because there are wide receiver end-arounds in this game. There is even a team power ranking page that shows teams from worst to best, and it progressively changes season over season. Now let's talk about the draft, because as I mentioned, this is something that I've been wanting so badly in other football games that you just don't get. There is an entire 3-round 100-player draft that is unlike anything I've ever seen in a mobile football game. Whether it be a specific position you set your scout to focus on, or maybe this player popped up in the draft watch with Brooke Powers. And at any point in time, you can sell your pick for franchise credits, you can view your team to see where your holes are at on your roster, and you can look up and down the draft board to see where your best chance of finding a diamond in the rough could be. And don't fear if you run out of scouting options, you can always pay a couple extra franchise credits, either take it from none to basic or basic to full. And as I mentioned before, no one is untouchable. That's why I do like the aspect of keeping a game somewhat like a game still, because if there's a player you just have to have and you're willing to spend up for them, make the right deal and you can still do it. And you can sort these players too by specific position, eliminating maybe defense as a whole, or maybe you just want to look at the trenches and offense and defensive linemen. And you can just tell that SMT put a lot of thought and effort into how the draft was going to function, because all these features are very easy to use. As weeks go by, you're going to have different prompts from your scouts throughout that are going to show new players that they've discovered. And here you're going to be able to not only set your focus for all players, but maybe you want to focus on DBs or wide receivers. You can do that when these things pop up, or in fact, you can go to the scout at any time and set that focus. Another nice aspect of this game is that player progression happens organically as the season goes on. You'll be prompted after a couple different games throughout the season of your new increases to players, and you'll even be able to see where their star ratings increase alongside their attributes. And if you continue to upgrade facilities like the gym and the practice field, and maybe even bring in a better trainer, you're going to see progression skyrocket. At the time of recording this, SMT is also kind of workshopping a new store part of this game. It's all just cosmetic from what it seems, whether it be new stadiums, new jerseys, that kind of thing. So unless you care specifically about cosmetics, you don't have to worry about any of that. But if you do want to be able to rename your team or your players, that might be under the $1 premium, but you're going to see something like that in a game like Retro Bowl 2. So what are we working for? What's the end goal of Super Tiny Football? Well, besides building an awesome roster and trying to develop your team, you're trying to win the Super Tiny Bowl championship. You're trying to see all of your little players, all the cheerleaders dancing, trying to see that awesome flyover, and trying to see that team synchronized dance. I hope you guys give Super Tiny Football a try and let me know in the comments what you think of the game. Again, I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't think you would love it just as much as I do. I appreciate you guys watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.